Welcome to this episode of Home Built Workshop. Today I'm going to build a coffee table out of some slabs of lumber. On a recent trip to my hometown of Pennsylvania, I brought back these slabs of hardwood that were cut from my grandpa's property. I believe they're either oak or maple. I'm not sure yet. They've been sitting around for quite a while. They're pretty weathered. I should be able to tell a little bit better the wood species once I get this cleaned up. When I found the slab, it was all one piece, and I couldn't fit it in the truck in order to bring it home. So with a couple of careful measurements, I trimmed it down already to a rough size using a circular saw. And that was really just so I could get it in the truck and bring it home. It's been sitting in the shop here for a little while so it can acclimate. I think it's about time to get this project going. I'm going to do waterfall style edges for this, so I need to cut 45-degree angles on all the pieces. I'll start out with a straight edge clamp to my piece and my circular saw set to 45 degrees. If you're trying to do a cut like this, don't make the mistake I did and start out trying to do the whole cut at once. Otherwise, this happens. Wow! You'll end up filling your shop with smoke and get a lousy cut. For some reason it didn't dawn on me that I should just take small passes at first. Once I realized what I was doing wrong, it cut fine. Now that I have all the angles cut, I need to get them to fit nice and tight. They don't fit nice and tight right now because the board is cupped. So what I need to do is take a flap disc on my grinder and do a little bit of carving. With the grinder, I'll sand away the high spots, taking my time, trying not to remove too much material, and testing the fit again and again and again until I get it nice and tight. Well, I don't know if you'd call it a fail or what, but I've been trying for about an hour to get these boards to fit together at a nice 90-degree corner. I just can't seem to get it to fit where I'm gonna get a good enough glue joint where I feel comfortable using this thing. I just don't think it's gonna give a good enough glue joint to hold up. So I think I need to forgo my waterfall edge table. Kind of a bummer. I'm sure there's a way to do it, but with the tools I have available at the moment, I just don't think I can get a good enough glue joint on there. So, with my saw set back to 90 degrees, I'm just going to cut that bevel right back off. So I'm not out of the woods yet. I still have the hump in this board to deal with. If I take the side and I lay it on there, it rocks still. Which I knew was still going to be a problem. So what I need to do is I need to flatten that out a little bit. Now my router planer sled that I built was just a little bit too small for this. It's really only a hump in one spot. So I'm going to take my router with a straight cutting bit and I'm going to try to freehand level that out. I'm making marks at 3 inches in. I think that's where I'm going to put the legs. It's really hard to see a line on this wood, so I'm going to use tape as my line. When I lay my leg in place, I can now trace a line to follow with the router. I don't think I'll need to flatten it all the way across, just where that high spot is. With the first side routed out so it's nice and flat, now I need to do this other side. The problem is, when the way this board was shaped, after I cut off the 45-degree angles, I lost a little bit of length there. So now the side is a little bit too long. There's a couple of nice splits in here. I was going to be able to save that when I was using the waterfall design, but now since I'm not, I need to decide what to do with this. I think right here, I can just break this off at this crack and use the narrow end as the leg. Now I'll do the same thing I did on the other side. I'll lay out my marks on some tape, then I'll route out a groove that's nice and flat. And now, we sand like fools for what's going to feel like hours. Starting out with some 60 grit on my random orbit sander. Before I get too far along with the sanding, I realize that I'm better to get these cracks stabilized. I've got some thin CA glue. I want to just squirt some of that down in the cracks. And I'll spray it with a little bit of accelerator to dry it up. The reason I want to go ahead and do this now is because as the glue dries, in case there's anything left on the surface, I'll be able to have that all sanded off and it won't show up. The glue will only be in the cracks. I need to get back to sanding. One small problem is that random orbit sander, even with 60 grit paper, is just not cutting it. I will be sanding this thing for days and days and days. There's already enough sanding to do. I don't need that process to be slowing me down. I'm going to use a belt sander to get all these bandsaw marks out. Once I got the surface fairly smooth with the belt sander, I went back to my random orbit sander and started working up through the grits. I started at 60 grit and sanded it all the way up to 220. Now that I'm finally done sanding, I'm going to drill some pilot holes for the screws that will attach the legs. Now using a 1/2-inch Forstner bit and a flag made out of masking tape as a depth stop, I'm going to countersink for some wooden plugs. Now I'm going to get the legs fastened on. I'm using some clamps to hold the legs vertical so that I can get everything glued into place. I'm going to use epoxy instead of wood glue to attach the legs to this tabletop. The joint is not exactly perfectly flat. It's quite close, but I know there's going to be some little imperfections that I feel that the epoxy will do a better job of filling any voids so I have a good strong joint. I'm just going to mix up some epoxy. I'll apply some to the end of the leg and also the underside of the top. Then I'll set it in place, clamp it down, then I'll just drive in some deck screws. You definitely don't want to use something like a drywall screw for this kind of a joint. Drywall screws are not quite as strong. You want to use something like a deck screw or maybe even a small lag bolt. While the epoxy is drying, I'm going to move over to the drill press and using a plug cutter, I'm going to cut some plugs out of walnut. Now at the bandsaw, I'll cut the plugs free. And since I don't need them that tall, I'll cut them all in half. Now I've got plenty of walnut plugs to plug those screw holes. Now I need to cut the legs so the table sits flat. I'm going to put the table on a nice flat surface. I'm using a piece of a hardwood bench top. I'm going to shim the table until there's no rocking. Right after I got the table all shimmed up and level, I was scribing the line so I could trim the legs so the table sat nice and flush. I didn't hit record. I missed the whole thing. And then the one little clip that I did get is of me scribing the line on the back side of the camera shot. Basically, what it boils down to is if, let's say this is my leg, and I shimmed the tabletop, but yet the leg was sitting like this. My top would be nice and flat because I've already shimmed it and measured it. But maybe my leg is really crooked, high on one side, low on another side. If you take something like a compass, or you can use a block of wood or something like that, and you keep that edge of your compass on a flat surface, and then you strike a line across there. It's hard to see, but that line right there would be where I would cut it. but it's even in parallel with the tabletop or the floor or whatever flat surface your piece you're working on is sitting. Then when you cut it on that line, it's going to be even with that surface. Then I'll just cut along that line using a circular saw. Now it's time to glue in the walnut plugs. I'll just squirt a little wood glue in the holes. As soon as the glue on the plugs is dry, I'll sand them down flush. Well, I'm ready to start the finishing process. For some reason, on every project, I always get really nervous at this point. I think that has to do with, I really hope that I chose the right process and that the finish that I chose is gonna look the way I want it to look. I always get really nervous about that. But I'm gonna start with the bottom, so worst case, I'll just sand it off. I'm using a really light colored stain. It's the same one that I used on the Barncaster guitar that I built, so I already do have somewhat of an idea of how it's gonna look. Yep, that's right. The next morning, I didn't like the color. Too yellow. Alright, so I'm kind of back to square one with the finish. I got most of this sanded off. Just wasn't happy with how yellow it was. Even though I already had an idea of how it was going to look, it looked a little bit more yellow on this wood. Yeah, I guess it's just the characteristics of the wood. Different kind of wood than what I used for that guitar. So, I'm going to start off with a coat of sanding sealer to seal the grain on this oak. I can already see that this finish is going to be a lot more like what I'm thinking. After that coat of sanding sealer is dry, I'm going to sand it lightly with some 220 grit sandpaper. For the finish, I'm using wipe-on poly. I actually think this will be a much better choice for a project like this than it was for the end tables that I made. Those end tables took a lot of wiping, a lot of nooks and crannies. This one, pretty simple. I think it'll work really well. After this coat's dried for a couple of hours, I'm going to sand it lightly with a Scotch-Brite pad. And then I'll just apply another coat of the poly. That's coat number 2 complete. I'm going to do this process one more time for a total of 3 coats on the underside. And then I'm going to start on the top. Well, about 15 coats of wipe-on poly later, this coffee table is done. I really like how it turned out. The only thing I need to do yet is wet sand and polish the top. I'm going to wait about a week or 2 for the finish to fully cure. I'm not going to do a video on that process unless you guys really want to see how I do it. If you do, leave a comment down below and let me know if you want to see that. I'll do a separate video if you do. I'm super happy with the way this thing turned out. I think the grain looks really good. I'm glad I decided not to put that stain on the top. Actually, once I get it wet sanded and buffed out, it's really going to smooth out the top and it's going to have a nice shine. It's going to look really great. I can't wait to see how it looks. So thanks a lot for watching this episode of Home Built Workshop. If you enjoyed this video and this build, please give this video a thumbs up. And also, share it with anybody you think might enjoy it. Don't forget also to subscribe to my YouTube channel so that you don't miss any upcoming projects. The next one is going to involve this piece of wood that I busted off the leg when I was building this coffee table. So make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss that and see what I'm going to do with this thing. So until next time, thanks a lot for watching this episode of Home Built Workshop. I haven't had too many outtakes. Oh, you almost had a good one there. I almost tripped over that cable. Haven't had too many outtakes as I really haven't had any real big issues with this build. But now I gotta flip this thing over so I can start putting some stain on the bottom. It is heavy. So you might get something good here. Oh, it probably weighs 100 pounds. Oh, it's heavy. Oh, who decided to build a thing out of? Oh. Wow, that's ridiculous. And of course, there's no convenient carry handles. Oh, I scuffed it up a little bit, scooting it around on the table. Guess I gotta sand that out real quick before I do some staining. Oh no. No gloves. Here we go with the sticky mess again. I don't know what it is. Seems like the gloss is less sticky than the satin. I don't know if it's just me or what. Seems different though. Yeah, I just spilled it. Whoops. Not a big deal, I don't think. Did it splash on the side? No. Ah, we're good. It's fine. It's fine.
Alright.
Doesn't it look cool?
Yeah. Coffee table. Are we gonna have it for a new lunch outside?
Well, this is gonna go inside. This is not for outside.
It's gonna be big and heavy.
It's very heavy.